Shir of Smith is rather not just Oil Shulchan Malachim, it's Oil Shulchan Melech Malchem Malachim, rather the Sikum, which is La Sukkah Shmaitzali, but also so the Sikum of Tresha and Tapucha Adama.
The potatoes, as we saw, is a different type of vegetable, both botanically and halacha. First of all, as we said, it has its own halachas to it. It's not in the Gemara, Rishonim, or Shulchan Aruch, and it has a few names to it. It's erdapple, depending on what time of history, but it's definitely called kartoffel or bulbis. But the issue is that the fact that the Rishonim referred to it as erdapple does not mean that's potatoes. Could be it was cucumbers, melons, but they didn't have potatoes until, again, in the 1600s. It became popular in the 1700s. But basically, the potatoes is not a root vegetable, and it's not a bulb, and it's not a plant. It's its own identity. It's called a tuber, which really grows differently. But that's why lamais and chizbrachas, it shouldn't be much of a difference, because the fact that it grows in the ground, from the ground, is enough to make it a bar pri adama. Some have the minhag to make a shackle because they're concerned it might be something like a mushroom, which is a shackle, or maybe fakert because of its multiple usage. It's like rice, which might be a mezainis. So it's interesting. Either it's a shackle or it's a mezainis. Nothing hadamadik, but it has its own uniqueness. But basically, those that make shahakal have what to be saimechan, but the minhag roi v'olam is to make a hadama. But the evidence, if a person made a mezainis on potatoes, so we can't say after repeat the bracha, could be used yaitze b'diavad plus mezainis. Some poskim hold is a bracha klali. It's very common a person made a mezainis on a Pesach cake, which is really potato starch, but the evidence be yaitze with that. Alamichya, unfortunately, you're not yaitze. That's certainly too big of a bracha, and then you have to make another bar nefashis. A raw potato, the bracha is a shahakol because it's not royal achila as it is. Kugel and latkes are almost always hadama unless it's completely pureed, and then the minhag is to make a shahakol. But the evidence made a potato and kugel or latkes hadama, no matter what, it was yaitza because that's the ikad din. But certainly on it there are pieces, it's hadama without a suffix. Mashed potatoes are always hadama, unless of course it's powdered potatoes, which it seems to us is a shahakol, just like Pringles are shahakol, because that's a newly recreated food that's not exactly the potato. Potato chips, potato sticks, French fries are certainly hadama. That's prima zutta. That's a slice of it, but it's the original fruit. Sweet potatoes, all agree, are hadama, even though they make a shackle on regular potatoes, but sweet potatoes is hadama. It doesn't have any of the sveikis that potatoes has. A raw potato is muktzah, even the tzarech gufa mekaymai, because a raw potato is considered not functional. It's muktzah machmas gufay. And of course, yichud would not help. Someone pointed out that some people use raw potatoes as a refuah for burns. So assuming there's no problem of refuah, which is a different shaila, but here would be a question of muktzah. So if someone knows he might need it for his burn on Shabbos, and he has a heta, of course, to put on the potatoes, so that would be a case where yichud would help. He's miyachid to use it for a burn. Cholent potato that's so loose and so soft that when you pick it up, it falls apart, might be considered already tochun, it's already ground, and the Shabbos, according to some Zalman holds, you're allowed to mash it further to feed a baby. There are some reservations about using a potato for karpas, as we said. First of all, you hold it to shackle, it's a problem. Number two, you don't have to wash your hands when you eat potatoes, even if you dip it into a liquid, because it's eaten with a fork. And also, potatoes, it doesn't have that, the oil type of zechil that really the karpas is supposed to have, but those that use potatoes, there's what to be saimechan. The minhag of many is to prefer a celery, that's a karpas in Arabic and in other languages as well. There is no problem of kitnius on powdered potatoes, powder, or potatoes for that matter. There's no kitnius on something that didn't exist. So here the fact that that potatoes is a later discovery works to our benefit. Chazal would have asked potatoes, but they didn't because they didn't have it. Potatoes are oila shulchan malachim in our times. That seems to be unanimous. The question is, if you make potato chips, is that oila shulchan malachim? Probably not, or probably certainly not. People have asked me that they sit on a fancy dinner on top of a main course, but that doesn't make it oila shulchan malachim. So I think we could still assume that potato chips is not oila shulchan malachim. Is there an issa b'shalakam by potato chips? That's a tough question, because the min is oila, the potato chip is not. Some look at the min, and therefore would be bishalakum. Some look at the finished product, which is not, and the OU's position, and that's the reason why there's a hechsher on hairs and wise potato chips. It's not bishul yisrael, but doesn't need bishul yisrael, and the hechsher is on the ingredients. Those that prefer and demand bishul yisrael, because you look at the potato, and the min has to be bishalakum, has to be bishul yisrael. I'm sorry, and so too potato chips. Potato Pringles, there's more of a reason to be choishish because the original potato was first cooked, and that's when the issa was chal. A potato peeler that's only for potatoes needs tefillah b'loi bracha. A vegetable peeler, an apple corer, needs tefillah with a bracha. A can opener does not need tefillah, and a nutcracker l'char should be toivel with a bracha. Yes, sorry.